They tried to break you. They weaponized your weaknesses against you. They manipulated your empathy, drained your energy, made you question your own sanity. And they thought they had won. But something happened that they never saw coming. You healed. And now, the person who emerges from the ashes of what they tried to destroy is the greatest threat they will ever face. Not because you seek revenge, not because you've become cruel, but because you've become something they can't manipulate, something they can't control, something that terrifies them to their very soul. Carl Jung had a name for this. He called it the wounded healer. And today, I'm going to explain why the healed, highly sensitive person is the most dangerous person to those who tried to break them, and why modern neuroscience confirms that this transformation is permanent and irreversible. Before we continue, I need you to understand something fundamental. When I say dangerous, I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about revenge. I'm talking about something much deeper. I'm talking about a person who has become immune to the same tactics that almost destroyed them, a person who has developed psychological antibodies against manipulation, a person who sees through masks with a clarity that terrifies those who depend on masks to survive. This is the healed, highly sensitive person, and this is who you are becoming. Jung discovered something fascinating about the healing process. He realized that people who go through what he called individuation, the process of becoming whole, they don't revert back to who they were before. They transform into something new, something stronger, something more conscious. He used the metaphor of alchemy to describe this. The ancient alchemists tried to turn lead into gold. Jung realized that the human psyche does something similar. It transforms pain into wisdom, transforms trauma into strength, transforms wounds into power. But here's what Jung discovered that is crucial for you to understand. This transformation only happens when you confront the darkness, when you go through what he called Nigredo, the dark night of the soul, when you face your shadow and the shadow that others projected onto you. The highly sensitive person who was abused by a narcissist has gone through a brutal Nigredo. You were forced to confront the darkest side of human nature. You saw cruelty disguised as love, saw manipulation dressed up as care, saw the emptiness hidden behind grandiosity. And if you survived that, if you emerged on the other side, you've undergone a transformation that few people in the world experience. You've become what Jung called the wounded healer. The archetype of the wounded healer comes from Greek mythology. Chiron was a centaur who had profound knowledge of healing and medicine. But he carried a wound that he could never heal in himself. And it was exactly this wound that made him the greatest healer of all. Jung used this myth to explain something profound about the human psyche. Those who have suffered the most often become those who can help others the most, but not because they've become saints, because they've become conscious, because they've integrated the darkness instead of denying it. Andrew Huberman and modern neuroscience confirm what Jung discovered intuitively. Research on neuroplasticity shows that the human brain literally reconfigures itself after intense experiences. The neural circuits that process threats, emotions, and relationships can be completely reorganized. Dr. Victor Carrion, a PTSD specialist at Stanford, explained on the Huberman Lab podcast that the brain of someone who has experienced trauma can develop new connections that didn't exist before. These connections allow them to process information differently, allow them to recognize patterns that were previously invisible, allow them to respond instead of react. This is exactly what happens with the healed, highly sensitive person. Their brain doesn't revert to its pre-trauma state. It evolves into a new state, a state that includes all the knowledge acquired during suffering. But without the chronic pain that accompanied that knowledge, let me explain exactly what changes in the highly sensitive person when they heal. There are 7 transformations that make this person the greatest threat to those who tried to destroy them. The first transformation is perception without absorption. Before healing, the highly sensitive person absorbed the emotions of others, felt the pain of others as if it were their own, carried the emotional weight of everyone around them. This made them vulnerable to manipulation. The narcissist could inject negative emotions, and the highly sensitive person absorbed them automatically. After healing, something changes. The highly sensitive person still perceives, still feels, still detects the emotions of others with surgical precision, but they stop absorbing. They develop what Jung would call psychic boundaries. They can witness the pain without carrying the pain, can perceive the manipulation without being affected by it. This is devastating for the narcissist because their main weapon was the ability to transfer their pain onto you. Now that weapon no longer works. They fire, but the bullets don't penetrate. The second transformation is clarity without reactivity. Before healing, when the highly sensitive person perceived something wrong, they reacted emotionally. The perception came accompanied by fear, anger, or despair. This clouded their vision, made clear action difficult, and gave the narcissist material to use against them. After healing, perception comes accompanied by calm. You see the manipulation, but you don't feel panic. See the anger of the narcissist, but you don't feel fear. See the attempt at control, but you don't feel despair. You simply observe and act accordingly. Huberman explains that this happens because the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, develops stronger connections with the amygdala, the emotional center. You don't lose the capacity to feel. You gain the capacity to regulate what you feel, to choose how to respond instead of reacting automatically. The third transformation is confidence in your own perception. One of the most devastating tactics of the narcissist is gaslighting, making you doubt what you see, question your sanity, convincing you that the problem is you, not them. The highly sensitive person before healing was particularly vulnerable to this. Their empathetic nature made them consider the perspective of others. Their tendency to self-question made them doubt themselves. The narcissist exploited this without mercy. After healing, something changes radically. You stop doubting, not because you've become arrogant, but because you've learned in the most painful way possible to trust what you perceive. You saw that you were right all along. You saw that your intuition was accurate, and now no one will make you doubt it again. This terrifies the narcissist because gaslighting was their most powerful tool. Without it, they can't control the narrative. They can't make you question reality, and reality, seen with clarity, is devastating for those who live on lies. The fourth transformation is the ability to leave. Before healing, the highly sensitive person, the HSP, was trapped in toxic relationships. Their empathy made them want to help. Their hope made them believe in change. Their fear of conflict made them avoid leaving. They stayed, suffered, and stayed a little longer. After healing, you develop the ability to simply walk away. No drama, no long explanations, no attempts to fix things. You recognize the toxicity, assess the situation, and you go. Period. This is something the narcissist absolutely does not expect. They are accustomed to people who stay, who beg, who try to resolve things. When you simply disappear, they lose all their power, because their power depended on your presence, your attention, your energy. The fifth transformation is immunity to the cycle. The narcissist operates in a predictable cycle: idealization, devaluation, discard, and then often an attempt to reconnect. They come back, promise change, show remorse, and the cycle restarts. Before healing, the HSP was vulnerable to this cycle. The hope that this time it will be different, the memory of the good times, the belief in the potential they saw in the narcissist. After healing, you see the cycle for what it is, a control strategy, a calculated manipulation, and you become completely immune. When they come back, you feel nothing. Not anger, not longing, not hope, just the recognition of a pattern that no longer affects you. The sixth transformation is the voice that will not be silenced. Before healing, the HSP often silenced themselves, avoided conflict, swallowed what they wanted to say, kept the peace at any cost, even if that cost was their own dignity. After healing, you find your voice, not an aggressive voice, not a vengeful voice, but a clear, firm, impossible to ignore voice. You say what needs to be said, without fear, without hesitation, without apologizing for existing. This completely changes the power dynamic. The narcissist depended on your silence, your willingness to keep secrets, your reluctance to expose the truth. When you find your voice, they lose control of the narrative. The seventh transformation is the ability to inspire others. Carl Jung discovered that the wounded healer not only heals themselves, they become capable of helping others to heal, not because they give advice, but because their own existence proves that healing is possible. When other victims of narcissists see you, they see hope. They see that it is possible to leave. They see that it is possible to recover. They see that it is possible to become stronger than before. And that is powerful. The narcissist depends on the isolation of their victims, the feeling that there is no way out, the belief that no one will understand. When you become a living example of recovery, you break that isolation. You show that there is another way. Now let me explain why these transformations are permanent, why the narcissist cannot reverse what happened in you. Neuroscience is clear about this. When the brain undergoes a significant reorganization, the new connections become part of the structure. This is neuroplasticity. The brain literally changes its architecture. As Andrew Huberman often highlights, this capacity for change is fundamental to our resilience. Dr. Carrion explained that there are critical windows of plasticity, periods when the brain is particularly open to change. Traumatic experiences open these windows. And if the person does the work of healing during this window, the changes consolidate permanently. The HSP who has experienced narcissistic abuse and then done the work of healing has gone through exactly this process. The trauma opened the window. The healing reorganized the connections. And now these new connections are part of who you are. This means that you cannot simply go back to being who you were before. You have evolved, and this evolution is irreversible. The narcissist intuitively feels this. They perceive that something has changed, that the old tactics don't work, that you no longer react in the same way. And this destabilizes them deeply, because the narcissist depends on predictable patterns. They knew your triggers, knew how to manipulate you, had a manual on how to control you, and suddenly, that manual no longer works. You have become unpredictable to them, and there is nothing more threatening to a manipulator than someone they can no longer predict. Carl Jung had a phrase that perfectly captures this dynamic. He said that the most dangerous people are those who have integrated their shadow, because they are no longer afraid of the dark. They have walked through the dark, known the dark, and emerged with a knowledge that cannot be taken away. The healed HSP is exactly that. You have walked through the dark of abuse, known human cruelty up close, faced your own shadow and the shadow that was projected onto you, and emerged with a clarity that few possess. This clarity is your weapon, not a weapon of attack, but a weapon of absolute defense. No one can manipulate you anymore because you see through everything. You recognize the tactics before they are even applied. You perceive the intentions before they are revealed. Now I want to tell you about what happens when the narcissist realizes that you have changed. Because this perception generates a series of reactions that you need to understand. The first reaction is the attempt to regain control. The narcissist will try the old tactics, will try to make you doubt yourself, will try to activate the old triggers, will try to pull you back into the cycle. When this doesn't work, they move on to the second reaction, anger. They become furious because they have lost control, because you no longer respond, because the power they had has evaporated. After anger comes the third reaction, the smear campaign. They will try to destroy your reputation, will tell distorted stories about you, will try to turn others against you, because if they cannot control you directly, they will try to control you through others. And finally, when none of this works, comes the fourth reaction, the disappearance. They go away, seek another victim, someone they can still manipulate, someone who has not yet gone through the transformation that you have. And here is the irony that Jung would have appreciated. The narcissist who tried to destroy you ended up strengthening you. They forced you to go through a process of individuation that you might never have initiated on your own. They pushed you to the bottom of the well, and down there you found resources you didn't know you had. This does not mean that you should thank the narcissist. It does not mean that the abuse was good. It just means that you transformed poison into medicine, transformed destruction into construction, transformed the worst experience of your life into the foundation of a stronger version of yourself. Huberman talks about post-traumatic growth, the idea that some people not only recover from trauma, but they grow beyond the point where they were before the trauma. They develop a resilience they didn't have, a wisdom they didn't possess, a strength they didn't know. The wounded healer, the highly sensitive person who has truly healed, is the perfect example of this. You didn't just get back to normal, you surpassed normal. You became something that didn't exist before the trauma, something that couldn't exist without the trauma. Not because the trauma was good, but because you did something extraordinary with it. Now, I want to give you some practical guidance on how to consolidate this transformation. Because even though the neurological changes are permanent, you can still strengthen these new connections. First, continue practicing mindful awareness. Observe your reactions. Notice when old patterns try to resurface, but observe without judgment, without self-criticism, just with curiosity. This strengthens the prefrontal cortex and its capacity for regulation. Second, maintain your boundaries. Every time you respect your own boundaries, you reinforce the message that you deserve protection. Every time you allow a violation, you weaken that message. Your boundaries are sacred. Treat them as such. Third, surround yourself with people who respect who you've become. Not people who want you to go back to who you were, not people who benefited from your previous vulnerability, people who celebrate your strength, who support your transformation, who see the gold that emerged from the lead. Fourth, use your experience to help others, not in a forced way, not seeking to save people, but simply being a living example that healing is possible. Your existence already helps. Your transformation already inspires. Fifth, never forget what you've learned. Not to live in the past, not to carry resentment, but to maintain the wisdom you've acquired, the knowledge about manipulation, the perception about people, the clarity about relationships. This is precious knowledge. Don't let it be lost. Jung used to say that individuation isn't a destination, it's a journey. You don't arrive at a final point and stop. You continue growing, continue integrating, continue becoming more whole. The wounded healer is on that journey, not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as what Jung would call a conscious individual. someone who knows their light and their shadow, someone who has integrated the parts that were fragmented, someone who has become whole in a way that few manage. And that's what the narcissist will never understand. They live on the surface, live in the mask, live in the constant performance of being someone they're not. They'll never make the journey you made, never have the courage to confront their own shadow, never experience the transformation you experienced. And that's why they fear you, not just because you can no longer be manipulated, but because you represent something they'll never have. You represent the possibility of integration that they don't have the courage to seek. You represent the healing that they refuse to accept. There's something more I need to tell you about this transformation, something that Jung discovered and that modern neuroscience has finally managed to explain: why the healed, highly sensitive person becomes specifically dangerous to the narcissist, and not just to any manipulative person. The answer lies in the complementarity of shadows. Jung observed that empaths and narcissists are often attracted to each other exactly because their shadows are complementary. The narcissist carries a shadow of vulnerability that they can't face. The highly sensitive person carries a shadow of power that they don't allow themselves to express. When they're together in a toxic relationship, each one projects their shadow onto the other. The narcissist projects their vulnerability onto the highly sensitive person, attacking exactly where they themselves are fragile. The highly sensitive person projects their unrecognized power onto the narcissist, seeing in them a confidence that they themselves desire to have. But when the highly sensitive person heals, something extraordinary happens. They integrate their own shadow of power. They recognize the strength they've always had, but that was hidden. They stop projecting and start embodying. And when that happens, they no longer need the narcissist to represent what they couldn't be. They become complete in themselves. They no longer project, no longer depend, no longer need. And the narcissist perceives this instantly. They feel they've lost the receptor of their projection, feel that the mirror that reflected them in an ideal way now shows a different image, feel that the entire system they built has collapsed. Research in social neuroscience confirms this. When two people are in a relationship, their nervous systems synchronize. They begin to regulate each other. The narcissist used this synchronization to dysregulate the highly sensitive person, to inject chaos, to maintain control through instability. When the highly sensitive person heals, they develop what researchers call autonomous self-regulation. They stop depending on the other to regulate their emotional state. They become their own center of stability. This fundamentally breaks the dynamic that the narcissist created. They can no longer destabilize you because you no longer depend on them for stability. They can no longer inject emotions because you no longer absorb them automatically. They can no longer control because you no longer need their control to feel safe. There's another aspect that needs to be discussed. The transformation of the healed, highly sensitive person doesn't only affect the relationship with the specific narcissist who abused them. It affects all future relationships. It creates a kind of invisible force field that automatically repels manipulative people. This happens because the healed, highly sensitive person emits different signals. Their posture changes, their voice changes, their gaze changes. Manipulative people instinctively feel that you're not an easy target. They seek more vulnerable prey. They move away even before trying. Dr. Elaine Aron, the researcher who defined the concept of the highly sensitive person, discovered that healed HSPs develop what she calls positive differential sensitivity. In good environments, they flourish even more than non-sensitive people. They respond to therapy more intensely. They absorb positive experiences with more depth. This means that the healed, highly sensitive person doesn't just protect themselves from evil. They amplify the good. They attract healthy people with the same intensity that they previously attracted toxic people. They create deep and genuine relationships with an ease that previously seemed impossible, and the narcissist perceives this too. They see you flourishing, see you building a life that they'll never be able to have. Imagine them witnessing the love and respect you are now receiving, the very love and respect they always craved but never knew how to obtain. And that consumes them from the inside out. Because deep down, the narcissist knows that something is fundamentally wrong with them. They know the mask is a lie. They know the emptiness will never be filled by the external achievements they chase. And when they see you, someone who has gone through the worst they could offer and emerged transformed, they confront a truth they cannot bear. You did what they will never have the courage to do. You faced your shadow. You traversed the dark night of the soul. You healed, and they remain trapped in the same empty performance they've always lived, still seeking external validation that never satisfies, still running from one source of supply to another, repeating the same destructive cycle, never changing, never growing, never healing. Research confirms that narcissists rarely change. A study analyzing 51 research papers with over 37,000 participants concluded that narcissistic traits are extremely stable over time. While you've evolved, they remain exactly where they were. While you've transformed, they continue repeating the same patterns. That's the ultimate irony. The narcissist thought destroying you would prove their power. Instead, it proved yours. It proved you had the strength to survive what they wouldn't. It proved you had the courage to face what they run from their entire life. It proved that you were, from the beginning, stronger than they'll ever be. Carl Jung wrote that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You did exactly that. You didn't run from the dark. You walked through it, and now you carry a light that was forged in the deepest darkness, a light that no one can extinguish. The narcissist tried to erase you. Instead, they ignited in you a flame that now illuminates your own path and the path of others who are still in the dark. You are living proof that destruction can transform into creation, that pain can transform into wisdom, that abuse can transform into strength. You are Jung's wounded healer. You are the greatest threat to those who tried to destroy you, and you're only just beginning to discover what you're capable of. There's one last thing I need you to understand. The transformation you've undergone isn't just personal. It has a ripple effect that spreads beyond you. Each person who heals from narcissistic abuse weakens the system that allows narcissists to thrive. Each victim who rises up is living proof that manipulation has limits. Each wounded healer who emerges from the darkness illuminates the path for others. You're not just saving yourself, you're participating in something bigger, in a silent movement of people who have awakened, who have seen through the masks, who refuse to be victims again. And that movement grows with each day, each video, each story shared, each person who finally understands that they deserve more. The narcissist depends on a world where victims remain silent, where shame keeps people quiet, where fear prevents healing. When you heal and share your journey, you help create a different world, a world where manipulation is recognized, where patterns are identified, where people know they're not alone. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you a question. Do you perceive the change in yourself? Do you feel you've become someone different after going through the healing process? Do you notice how the people who tried to manipulate you now react differently to you? Comment down below. Share your transformation experience. You are not alone. There are thousands of other people watching this video who have gone through the same process, who have emerged stronger, who have become threats to those who tried to destroy them. When you share your story, You inspire others who are still in the midst of the process. You show them that it's possible to reach the other side. You become the wounded healer that Jung described, helping others simply by existing. And if this video helped you understand your own transformation, consider supporting this work. The Super Thanks button down below is one way you can participate. You're not being drained like you were with the narcissist. You're choosing to support something that gives you value back, something that helps you understand who you've become. Jung wrote that the most dangerous person is the one who has made peace with themselves, because they have nothing left to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to fear. You are becoming that person. The narcissist tried to destroy you. Instead, they created their greatest threat. Use that power wisely until the next video. And remember, you're no longer the person they tried to destroy. You're someone completely new, someone stronger, someone they now fear. This is your transformation. This is your victory.